The glass doors of Atlanta First Bank slid open, and laughter filled the air before the old woman even reached the counter. Her olive dress was torn, her gray hair uncombed, a picture of poverty walking through a palace of privilege. "Please," she said quietly, "I came to make a withdrawal." But when security dragged her out moments later, no one realized the beggar they mocked was the billionaire who owned the building, and before the hour was over, their laughter would turn to terror. Hello friends, welcome to another one of our stories. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Atlanta, London, maybe New York, or somewhere in Canada? We want to know. Also, please like this video and click the subscribe button. We want you to be part of our 5,000 subscribed community members at the end of this month. Now, let us begin the story. The hum of air vents filled the marble lobby of Atlanta First Bank, blending with the rhythm of clicking heels and muted conversations. Sunlight poured through the glass walls, bouncing off silver counters and mirrored floors. Everything here screamed precision and privilege, until the glass doors opened. An old black woman stepped inside. Her olive dress hung loosely from her frail frame, its hem stained from rain and city dust. Her gray hair, wild and uneven, framed a face weathered by time but steady with quiet grace. She clutched a torn leather handbag close to her chest as she walked toward the counter. 3 tellers in matching yellow suits turned in unison. Their perfume lingered in the air, sharp as their expressions. Can we help you?" Brittany asked, one brow raised. "Yes," the woman replied softly. "I came to make a withdrawal." The lobby fell silent for a moment. Then Tasha snorted. "A withdrawal? Ma'am, do you even have an account here?" Renee folded her arms, smirking. "Sweetheart, this isn't a food bank." Carrie Davis didn't react. Her voice was calm, deliberate. "I said I came to make a withdrawal. Please, attend to me." A few customers exchanged looks. Someone chuckled from the line. The laughter grew, soft at first, then crueler. "Someone call security," Brittany muttered, waving toward the guard near the door, "before she tries to beg inside." The guard hesitated. Carrie's tone changed, quiet but commanding. "I'm not here to beg. I'm here to be treated like any other customer." For a heartbeat, everything stopped. Even the guard froze, sensing something beneath her frail posture. Authority, maybe. Dignity. Then Brittany scoffed, breaking the moment. "Sir, do your job." The guard approached. "Ma'am, please, let's step outside." Carrie didn't argue. She simply looked around the hall one last time, at the glass walls, the gold logos, the young faces twisted with pride, and let out a tired sigh. As she was escorted toward the exit, whispers followed her like shadows. "She's crazy. Maybe she's lost. Poor thing." Outside, the sun struck her face. She steadied herself against the wall and slowly opened her worn handbag. Inside wasn't a collection of rags or coins, but a gleaming iPhone 15 Pro Max. Her fingers moved across the screen with practiced precision. "Get me the branch manager," she said coldly. The woman they had just thrown out wasn't a beggar. She was Carrie Davis, founder and silent owner of Davis Federal, the very empire these tellers worked for. And in the next 10 minutes, Atlanta would learn that power doesn't always wear designer shoes. The laughter hadn't stopped echoing through the hall when Carrie turned back toward the counter. Her voice was soft but steady, the kind that carried weight even without volume. "Please," she said, "I came to make a withdrawal." For a split second, the air felt still again. Even the guard paused mid-step, caught by the calm in her tone. But Brittany broke the silence with a sharp chuckle. "A withdrawal? From where? Heaven's Bank?" she sneered. "Because last I checked, you need money to take money out." Renee let out a quiet laugh, covering her mouth with painted nails. "Lady, please, don't cause a scene. This is a private bank, not a shelter." Tasha rolled her eyes and tapped the desk impatiently. "You heard her, ma'am. There's the door." Carrie's eyes moved slowly from one teller to the next, her expression unreadable. "Is this how you treat every customer who doesn't look rich?" Her question sliced through the room. Even the man in line behind her lowered his phone, suddenly curious. The security guard, tall, broad-shouldered, and hesitant, shifted uneasily. "Ma'am," he said softly, "you'll have to step outside." "Step outside?" Carrie repeated, her voice still calm. "You'd throw out an elderly woman asking to be served?" The guard hesitated, but Brittany's voice snapped across the room like a whip. "Sir, remove her before she scares our real clients." That was the breaking point. The guard sighed, nodded slightly, and stepped forward. "I'm sorry, ma'am. You can't stay here." Carrie didn't resist. She glanced once more around the room, the glass walls gleaming under the morning light, the young tellers standing tall in their tailored suits, and the silent customers who had chosen to say nothing. Then she let out a long, tired sigh. As the guard took her gently by the arm, someone from the line muttered, "America's full of crazies these days." The words stung, not because they were true, but because of how casually they were spoken. Outside, the bright Atlanta sun struck her face. The world felt hotter, heavier. She steadied herself against the wall, exhaling slowly. Her trembling hand reached into the old leather bag that everyone had mocked and pulled out something that didn't belong in a beggar's life. A sleek iPhone 17 Pro Max. Silver. Untouched. Expensive. The reflection of the bank's logo shimmered on its screen as she unlocked it with a swift motion. Her eyes, moments ago weary and sad, now burned with focus. The softness was gone. The woman who had walked in humbly moments ago was no longer standing there. She lifted the phone to her ear and said quietly, "Get me the branch manager." And just like that, the story the tellers thought they were laughing at had turned into one they would never forget. Inside his glass-walled office on the top floor, Mr. Harris, the branch manager of Atlanta First Bank, sat hunched over a stack of quarterly reports. Numbers and graphs filled the pages, nothing unusual for a quiet Monday morning. He sipped his coffee absently, scanning the data with half his mind already on lunch, when his phone rang. He answered without looking at the caller ID. "Hello. This is Harris." A pause. Then a calm, unmistakably firm voice cut through the line. "Harris, it's Carrie Davis. I'm standing outside your branch, and your staff just threw me out." The pen dropped from his hand, clattering against the desk. His pulse spiked. "Ma'am, Ms. Davis, you're outside?" "10 minutes," she said, her tone leaving no room for delay. "I expect you at the entrance." The line went dead. For a moment, Harris just sat there, frozen. His mind scrambled to process what he'd just heard. Carrie Davis? The founder? The woman whose name was printed on every shareholder certificate? The billionaire who built the company from nothing? He bolted upright, nearly knocking over his chair. Sweat already beaded across his forehead as he straightened his tie and dashed out of the office, ignoring the confused stares of his assistants. Downstairs, the scene was business as usual. Brittany, Tasha, and Renee stood behind the counter, laughing quietly about the crazy old lady from earlier. Brittany was in the middle of reenacting her Heaven's Bank joke when the glass doors burst open. A sleek black Cadillac SUV screeched to a stop outside, the sound slicing through the hum of the bank's chatter. Every head turned. Mr. Harris stepped out, moving faster than anyone had ever seen him. His normally composed face was pale, his expression frantic. He rushed straight to the counter. "Where is she?" he barked. The laughter died instantly. Who, sir?" Brittany stammered. Harris's eyes burned with urgency. "The founder of this bank, Mrs. Carrie Davis." The color drained from all three women's faces. Renee's lips parted. Speechless. Tasha blinked, confused. "Sir, you mean that old lady?" Brittany whispered. Before he could respond, the glass doors opened again. Carrie Davis stepped inside. Her back was straight, her steps deliberate. The same olive dress, the same frail frame. But the energy in the room shifted. The laughter, the arrogance, the chatter, all gone. Every sound fell away as she walked across the polished floor. Her head was high, her eyes steady, her dignity untouched. And as the staff watched in stunned silence, they realized the truth that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The woman they had mocked for looking powerless was the one person in that building who could take everything they had. The air in the banking hall felt heavy, thick with confusion and fear. No one dared to move. The only sound was the echo of Carrie's slow footsteps as she walked toward the counter. "Good afternoon, Mr. Harris," she said quietly, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone used to being obeyed. Mr. Harris bowed his head immediately. "Ms. Davis, we didn't recognize you. Please, forgive us." Brittany's voice cracked. "Ms. Davis? You mean this is—" "Yes," Harris snapped, his tone sharp with shame. "The woman whose name is on your paycheck." The three tellers froze, their confidence dissolving in an instant. Renee's hands trembled, Tasha's lips quivered, and Brittany's once proud posture shrank. The weight of their arrogance pressed down like a mountain. Carrie opened her worn handbag, the same one they had mocked earlier, and carefully pulled out a golden certificate, the paper slightly aged, but the seal still shining. She laid it on the counter for all to see. Davis Federal Banking Group, Founding Deed, 1989. Carrie Ann Davis, founder and chairwoman. Gasps rippled through the room. One customer dropped his phone. The guard who had escorted her out lowered his head in shame, whispering a quiet apology under his breath. Carrie looked around, her eyes calm but piercing. "I stood here for 15 minutes, she began, her voice firm but never raised, "and not one person treated me like a human being. Not one." She turned toward the lobby, where more employees had gathered near the entrance. The silence was suffocating. Every word she spoke landed like a stone. "Some of you judged me because of my clothes, others because of my age, but what you failed to see was simple. A customer, just like everyone else." A low murmur spread across the crowd as executives rushed in, startled by the commotion. When they saw who stood at the counter, their expressions turned from confusion to pure panic. They hurried toward her, bowing their heads as cameras from nearby customers flashed, capturing every moment. Carrie didn't look at them. Her focus stayed on the three tellers: Brittany, Tasha, Renee. Her tone softened, but the disappointment in it cut deeper than anger ever could. "Hand over your badges." Tears filled Tasha's eyes as she fumbled to remove her ID. Brittany hesitated, whispering, "Please, Miss Davis, we didn't know." Carrie met her gaze. "That's the problem," she said quietly. "You didn't know, and yet you judged me." One by one, the tellers placed their badges on the counter. Carrie looked down at them for a moment before turning away. "Maybe," she said softly, "when you lose what you think you deserve, you'll finally learn the value of respect." No one spoke. The only sound that followed was the echo of her heels against the marble floor, each step a lesson none of them would ever forget. 3 weeks had passed since the day Carrie Davis walked out of Atlanta First Bank. The scandal had made headlines, the video of her humiliation viewed millions of times across social media. The tellers were gone. The branch had been restructured. Justice, by every standard, had been served. Yet, as the sun sank behind the Atlanta skyline, Carrie sat by the wide glass window of her penthouse, staring at the city she built and rebuilt. The gold light painted her reflection on the glass, proud but tired. The sound of silence filled the room, interrupted only by the faint ticking of an antique clock. Still, her heart was restless. She could still see their faces: Brittany's trembling hands, Tasha's tearful eyes, Renee's broken voice begging for another chance. Those expressions had stayed with her longer than she expected. They were cruel, she thought, but they were also young, blind in ways I once was. A soft knock came at the door. "Come in," she said. Her assistant, a quiet man named Leonard, stepped in holding a neat stack of envelopes. "From the dismissed staff, ma'am," he said gently. "They've been arriving every day since last week." Carrie hesitated before taking them. Her hands brushed over the paper like they carried weight. She opened the first letter. "Dear Ms. Davis, I've been out of work since that day. My daughter's been sick, and I can barely afford her medication. I was foolish, arrogant, and cruel. I've learned my lesson. Please, forgive me." Brittany Carey set it down quietly and opened the next. Dear Ms. Davis, I've spent every night replaying that morning. The shame has been unbearable. People whisper when they see me, I can't find peace. I thought being confident made me powerful. I was wrong. Renee. Her eyes softened. She opened the last one. Dear Ms. Davis, I don't ask for my job back. I just want you to know I've changed. I'm taking care of my mother now. I understand what respect means, and I'll never judge anyone by what they wear again. Tasha. Carrie closed her eyes. The letters trembled slightly in her hands. For the first time in years, tears rolled down her cheeks, quiet, unforced, not for herself, but for the pride that had broken 3 young women who might have simply needed guidance, not punishment. She looked out at the city lights, her voice barely a whisper. Maybe, she said, I was too harsh. And for the first time since that day, the weight of justice felt a little too heavy on her chest. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the wide windows of Carrie's penthouse, filling the marble floors with gold. She had barely slept. The words from those letters still echoed in her mind, not as guilt, but as a quiet conviction that something unfinished remained. She picked up her phone and pressed a number. Leonard, she said softly. Yes, ma'am? Invite them to the mansion, all 3. There was a pause on the other end. Brittany, Tasha, and Renee? Yes, she replied. Tell them it's not a meeting. It's a conversation. By afternoon, a sleek black sedan pulled into the curved driveway of Carrie's estate. The women stepped out nervously, clutching their handbags like shields. The mansion before them wasn't cold or intimidating. It was breathtaking, elegant, surrounded by blooming gardens and sunlight glinting off white stone pillars. Renee whispered, I thought there'd be security. Brittany swallowed hard. Maybe there is. We just can't see them. Tasha nodded silently, her palms damp. When the front door opened, they froze. Carrie stood there in a soft blue gown, her gray hair neatly tied back. There was no jewelry, no trace of the power they'd seen in the bank, just quiet grace. She smiled faintly. Come in. The living room smelled of lavender and old books. A gentle fire crackled in the marble hearth. On the coffee table sat a tray of tea and biscuits, simple, yet deliberate. Sit, Carrie said. They obeyed instantly. For a moment, none of them could speak. The silence felt heavy, almost reverent. Finally, Brittany broke it, her voice trembling. Ma'am, we're sorry. Truly sorry. Carrie said nothing, only nodded slightly for her to continue. Renee wiped her eyes. We were cruel because we felt small. Every day we see people come in here with money and power, and it made us feel invisible. So we tried to act like them. Tasha's words followed, soft and broken. We thought being mean meant being strong, but that day, it showed us what real strength looks like. For a long while, Carrie said nothing. She studied them, not with anger, but with the kind of understanding that comes from pain. Then she spoke, her voice calm and warm. I built a bank to help people, not to humiliate them, she said. And if I could forgive the man who once stole my company, I can forgive you too. Tears streamed down their faces. Brittany buried her face in her hands. Renee reached for Tasha's hand, squeezing tightly. Carrie stood slowly, her presence gentle but firm. Tomorrow, she said, you'll start over, under me. But this time, she paused, her eyes softening. You'll serve with humility. The 3 women nodded through their tears. For the first time since that dreadful day, they felt something they hadn't in weeks. Hope. 2 months after that quiet meeting at the mansion, the world began to hear Carrie Davis's name again, not as a scandal, but as a story of rebirth. At the heart of downtown Atlanta, banners fluttered outside Davis Federal's headquarters. The Grace Account Program, empowering women, restoring hope. It was a vision Carrie had once dreamed of decades ago, a financial initiative that offered zero-interest loans and mentorship to women rebuilding their lives after hardship. It wasn't charity, it was a chance to begin again. Standing on the small stage during the press announcement, Carrie spoke simply. "I've made mistakes too," she said, her voice soft but unwavering. "But grace isn't something you keep for yourself. It's something you give away." Behind her, 3 women stood, Brittany, Tasha, and Renee, no longer the arrogant tellers who once mocked a stranger, but the faces of transformation. Brittany now led outreach and community relations, visiting shelters and women's centers to share financial literacy programs. The same voice that once carried sarcasm now carried encouragement. Renee managed training and development, teaching new recruits how to treat every client with empathy and respect, the lesson she'd learned the hardest way possible. And Tasha oversaw client support, helping women navigate the process with patience and dignity, her calm presence a reflection of Carrie's own. The program grew quickly. Within weeks, hundreds of applications poured in, single mothers, small business owners, and women who had been turned away by every traditional bank. The initiative became a lifeline, not just for its clients, but for the women who once caused Carrie's deepest disappointment. A national news outlet soon picked up the story, broadcasting the headline across morning television, "From Humiliation to Humanity, How a Billionaire Turned Disgrace into Grace." Cameras filled Carrie's office again, this time not for scandal, but for inspiration. When a reporter asked why she forgave the women who humiliated her, she smiled gently before answering. "Because," she said, "I remember what it felt like to lose everything, and to have one person believe in me. Sometimes one act of mercy can rewrite a lifetime of mistakes." The clip went viral overnight, social feeds filled with comments calling her the Queen of Grace, the billionaire with a soul, and proof that forgiveness still exists. But Carrie didn't chase the spotlight. She simply sat by her office window, watching the world move below, knowing that somewhere, a woman was walking into a bank for the first time, not to beg, but to be seen. And that was all she ever wanted her empire to stand for. The rain had just stopped when Carrie's assistant stepped into her office. "Ma'am," he said softly, "there's a young man here to see you. Says it's personal." Carrie looked up from the stack of reports on her desk. "A client?" He shook his head. "No, ma'am. His name is Marcus Davis. Says he's from the South Side. Works at a community bank." The name made her pause. Davis wasn't uncommon, but something about the way he said it tugged at an old corner of her memory. "Send him in." A few moments later, the door opened, and a young man in his late 20s stepped in. He wore a simple gray suit, slightly worn but neatly pressed. His posture was respectful, his voice steady but humble. "Mr. Davis," he said, offering a small smile, "it's an honor to finally meet you." Carrie nodded politely. "And what brings you here, Mr. Davis?" He hesitated, glancing at the photo on her desk, a faded picture of a young woman holding a baby, both smiling under an old oak tree. His eyes softened. "My mother used to tell me stories about you," he said quietly. "She said you were her sister." The world seemed to stop. Carrie's fingers went still on the pen she was holding. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Your mother's name?" "Elaine," he said. "Elaine Davis." Carrie's eyes filled instantly. She rose slowly from her chair, her heart pounding. Elaine, her only daughter, the one she'd lost in the fire that destroyed their old home years ago, the one she'd buried in memory just to survive. Her lips trembled. "You're Elaine's boy?" He nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I was told she died when I was little, but my grandmother, the woman who raised me, said you might still be alive." Carrie covered her mouth, tears spilling freely now. She crossed the room, her hands shaking as she reached for him. The moment her arms wrapped around him, it was as if decades of silence and grief melted away. "I thought I lost everything," she whispered. "But you're my miracle." Marcus held her tightly, his voice breaking. "You didn't lose me, ma'am. You just didn't know where to find me." Months later, the entire banking world gathered for a press conference at Davis Federal. Carrie stood beside Marcus, her hand on his shoulder as cameras flashed. "This is Marcus Davis," she announced proudly. "He will take my place as CEO of Davis Federal Bank, a man raised without privilege but rich in integrity." The audience erupted in applause. Brittany, Tasha, and Renee stood near the front, smiling through tears. They now served as Marcus's department heads, the living proof that humility and second chances could rebuild anything. Carrie watched them all, her heart full. The legacy she thought was lost had found its way home. The grand hall of Davis Federal shimmered that evening, alive with warm light and quiet anticipation. Reporters, bankers, and community leaders filled the seats beneath the golden chandeliers. A banner stretched across the stage. 1 year of grace, empowering lives, restoring dignity. It was the anniversary of the Grace Account program, and though Carrie Davis now moved slower, her presence commanded the room as it always had. Her silver hair framed a soft, radiant face. Her steps, though careful, carried purpose. When she reached the podium, the room fell silent. She looked out over the crowd, faces she had once inspired, corrected, and forgiven, and smiled. Marcus stood beside her, tall and confident, his eyes reflecting pride and reverence. Brittany, Tasha, and Renee sat in the front row, their hands clasped, tears already welling. Carrie adjusted the microphone and began, her voice gentle but unwavering. "This bank," she said, pausing to meet their eyes, "was never built on wealth." She placed a hand over her heart. "It was built on worth, and worth begins with how we treat those we underestimate." The hall erupted in applause, rising like a wave. Cameras flashed. The once hardened executives who had doubted her now stood, applauding through tears. Brittany and the others wept openly, unable to contain the emotion that had carried them from shame to grace. Carrie continued, her tone softening. "When I lost everything years ago, I thought God had abandoned me. But now I see, sometimes He lets you be broken so you can rebuild others. What you give away in mercy, you gain back in legacy." Marcus reached for her hand as she stepped away from the podium. The applause grew louder, not for her title, but for her heart. Later that night, the city lay quiet under a sky dusted with stars. From her office window, Carrie gazed at the glittering skyline, Atlanta glowing like a living thing. The reflection of her younger self seemed to shimmer faintly in the glass. The woman who once walked into a bank in rags, laughed at and rejected, now standing at the summit of grace. She smiled faintly, whispering into the still air. They laughed at a homeless woman, but God laughed last. A soft breeze drifted through the open window, brushing against her face. The curtains swayed gently, carrying with them the faint echo of applause, the laughter of redemption, the hum of a city she helped heal. Carrie closed her eyes, peace washing over her like dawn. Somewhere in the distance, the Grace Account continued, women rebuilding, families thriving, lives restored. Her wealth had long faded into insignificance, but her mercy would outlive them all. The end. Thank you for watching this story until the end. If you enjoyed it, you will surely love the next one. It's as hopeful and more intriguing as you can ever imagine, so do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.